Welcome back to the All Ball Podcast, where it is all ball all the time. You are here with your host, Sean and Isaiah. This is episode 69, and today we're going to be going over a few trades, where we think these players should be traded to, and kind of just discussing some of the other trades in the league that we think should happen. But before all that, of course, the question of the day. Isaiah, how are you feeling today, man?
You know, as usual, I'm feeling good, man. I'm ready to get into it.
Yeah, I think we should definitely be feeling good after our Rockets go on our first winning streak of the season. And
we were happy to see that live.
Yeah, it was great, man. You know what? We smoked the Thunder, and it feels good to finally see Jabari coming around. But we'll go ahead and get into the Rockets a little bit later as we discuss some of these trades. I think I have the Rockets for two of them. But let's go ahead and get into the first one, which I think is pretty interesting. It's going to be the Golden State Warriors receive Wendell Carter Jr., and the Orlando Magic receive James Wiseman and Jonathan Kuminga. What are your initial thoughts on that trade?
You see, I feel like the Warriors probably have better potential options on the table than Wendell Carter Jr., but I think in terms of just this trade in a vacuum, I think it's a pretty even trade, because when you look at Kuminga and Wiseman's uncertainty between, Wiseman and his health problems and his lack of development because of his health problems, and then Kuminga's just lack of development because he doesn't get much playing time, it's a pretty fair trade, because the Magic are taking a big gamble on these guys, and I mean, what do they have to lose, really? And then the Warriors, they get back a more solid, stable, developed player, but who doesn't have much room to grow, which kind of, hampers their whole future potential development.
Well, for me, so the way I look at this trade is, I think this is a win-win for both teams, because at least with the Warriors, Steph and Klay are obviously getting older, and it's basically down to the point where it's the Steph show, and Klay's kind of falling out, even though Klay's obviously against the Rockets kind of turned it around, which sucks because even to this day I still hate the Warriors turning up versus my team. But I think at this point you've seen that Wiseman and Kuminga really haven't shown too much growth, and like you said, Wiseman more so because of injuries. But it doesn't even seem like Wiseman fits the team, and Kuminga doesn't have a role on this team either. So I think it's kind of worth the gamble to kind of ship away these quote-unquote prospects for this guy who, could stretch the floor, who's shown growth ever since he came from Chicago. And I think he could be a decent fit on the Warriors. And as for the Magic, what they're getting, they're basically getting two guys who could be something. Not much guarantee, but at the same time, you have Wendell Carter Jr., who's not old, but he's a little bit older than some of the other guys on the team, like a Paolo. Doesn't really fit
Wagner, Bol, those guys.
Right. So, in that sense, I think it'd be the smart move for both of these teams to, I mean, obviously this is theoretical, but to come to a trade of this type.
And, I think one thing about it is that I feel like the Magic, they more so stand to benefit from getting Wiseman in this trade than Kuminga, just because when you think about what Kuminga provides on the court, his main things are being, an all-around defender. And that's his main thing, honestly, that and athleticism. But when you look at the other things he's kind of trying to develop into his game, stretching the floor, becoming a better playmaker, he almost kind of becomes a redundant player, that rather oversized guy who can kind of do it all, which is what Paolo is for them. And so it's like he would just be a worse Paolo. So would he really even have a space on that team?
Yeah, I mean, I think Wiseman still is the better prospect here, even though he's struggled with his injuries and obviously that slowed his progression down. But I think Wiseman obviously has more all-around talent and is better with what he's come into the league with overall. Like you said,
Hmm.
Kuminga's more of a defensive slasher type of guy.
Hmm.
Um, so for that sense, I do agree with you that Wiseman is the better prospect and is what the Orlando should covet more.
Hmm.
But let's go ahead and move on to another trade. I also found this one pretty interesting. The 76ers would receive John Collins and Bojan Bogdanovic. Atlanta Hawks would receive Tobias Harris, Matisse Thybulle, and Shake Milton.
Wait, hold on. Go back through the trade.
Okay, the 76ers would receive John Collins and Bojan Bogdanovic. The Atlanta
Oh,
Hawks
okay.
would
See,
receive.
that's what threw me off. It's Bogdanovich that's on
Uh,
the Hawks. Yeah.
and then the Hawks would receive Tobias Harris, Matisse Thybulle, and Shake Milton.
You see, let me really analyze the Hawks because the Hawks are in a weird spot where they're playing well, but it's more so off just the back of their guard duo.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure if Tobias Harris really fits what this team needs, and
Mm-hmm.
so for that I say that this would be an L trade for Atlanta, but potentially the 76ers would benefit more from this.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right. As I've said before, I think Tobias Harris is pretty much the most average player you could be. Matisse Thybulle, I think, definitely deserves minutes, which he has not gotten this year from the 76ers.
Hmm.
Shake Milton is still a good guy who can give you buckets off the bench. And then as for the guys that are going to the Hawks, I'm sorry, the
Sixers.
76ers, John Collins, I think, can still be a possible, I think at his ceiling, like a third best player on a championship team.
I can see
And
that.
and at the floor, maybe like a sixth man, like a pretty decent sixth man. I
Mhm.
just think that his offensive consistency is something that's kind of worrisome. I think he's a pretty good defender. I think he's kind of
Mhm.
showed that throughout the years. But as for Bojan Bogdanovic, I haven't really paid too much attention to him this year, so I'm not really sure how well he's doing. Let me
See,
look up
that's the
his.
thing. I'm not sure how much he's played because I know he was injured at one point.
Mhm.
So that's probably a big part of that. But at the end of the day, regardless of how he's playing now or if he's playing at all, really, one thing we know for certain about him is that he's picked up solely to shoot the ball, which is what he does well.
Mhm. I mean, like I said, definitely think this is a trade that the 76ers win, but I also could see that the Hawks would win this by getting Thibault, who kind of replaces what Cam Reddish could have been in a way.
You see, here's the thing about that why I have a problem with that. Cam Reddish has an offensive game. It may
Mm-hmm.
not be the most consistent or anything, but he has an offensive game.
Mm-hmm.
And Matisse Thybulle, he simply doesn't, which is part of the reason why he doesn't get minutes. It doesn't make sense because the Sixers have plenty of offense as it is. But at the end of the day, he's not even really a reliable catch and shoot guy. He can't do anything off the dribble. And so when you think about that, I don't think that would really benefit Atlanta and how they run their offense, I should say.
So I mean, I just think it would be good to add depth at the wing position for especially their defense side of the ball because outside of DeAndre Hunter, um, I mean, who else do they have on that roster? I mean, I there might be someone else, but I just can't think of anyone else at the moment.
Hmm.
Especially if they're losing Collins, obviously Thibault isn't the big body that Collins is, but he can still kind of play that uh, for the defensive side of the ball.
Hmm.
But I think we can go ahead and move on to another trade.
Okay.
And this is one that I found really interesting because there's no picks involved. And I honestly disagree with this trade a lot, but it was just so interesting because the name's in there, and I wanted to hear your
Uh,
opinion. Kyle Lowry and Max Strus for Kyrie Irving.
Whoa. Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no. No way.
Yeah, it's
No
really
way.
confusing because there's, like I said, there's no picks in this deal, and like I said, I'm getting this off of Bleacher Report, so I'm not the one making up these deals. Um, I mean, what is your initial thought of this trade?
Okay, you see, my initial thought is this has to be one of those like ham-fisted, like rush job, didn't think about it too much trades that they
Mm-hmm.
came up with after Kyrie got suspended for we all know why.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was them assuming that Kyrie wouldn't play again for the Nets, and so they were just like, "Oh, where should they send him? What they want to get rid of him, so they'll probably just take anything." But in reality, that makes less than zero sense.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. For the Nets, you're obviously not getting anything back of real value. Like Max Strus is a good role player, and Kyle Lowry's at the end of his career, but you're still giving up a guy who could be, you know, would you consider Kyrie one of the guys that could be the best player on a championship team?
I wouldn't say he can be the best, but as we've seen, he absolutely can be a number two.
Right. So, you're giving up an all star. I'm not sure if I want to consider him a potential Hall of Famer at this moment, but
I wouldn't say so.
okay. Well, still, in that sense, you're giving up an all star, a guy who at once was considered a franchise player. I don't think that you could just give up Kyrie, even though he kind of comes with that luggage, for just Kyle Lowry and Max Strus without any picks in return. I get it. You kind of made up for the picks that you gave to Houston for the James Harden trade that you made with the 76ers, but at this point with Brooklyn and their future, it doesn't seem like, I mean, it kind of seems like they kind of have to take on that OKC role while also trying to be competitive because they still have KD. So you
Mhm.
got to still compile the picks while also trying to add like decent talent around KD. I obviously don't think KD can do it alone, especially if you're giving up Kyrie. But I mean, Kyle Lowry's no slouch. Like I said, like I don't think he's playing
Let's
great this year, but he's
Yeah,
still
but yeah, I was about to say, let's be real. He's no
he's not
slouch, but he's getting pretty close to
he's
it.
not Raptors Kyle Lowry anymore. He's not even pre like beginning of Heat career Kyle Lowry.
Yeah,
Um,
but
and I mean,
something that you said though is that dang, I lost it. I lost it. Oh my god. Okay, I got it. Yeah, something that you said was that the Nets they need to kind of take on an OKC role while
mhm,
being competitive. And that's the thing. I truly don't see how they could even go about doing that because they really don't have any valuable assets outside of their air quote big three.
mhm,
And I'm pretty sure that Simmons isn't going anywhere. And then KD, I think he's made it very clear that he is absolutely open to leaving. But
mhm.
as we saw, no teams were really willing to give up what the Nets were asking for him. So at
Right,
that point, I really don't think that there's a way for them to stockpile those picks like OKC is.
right. And, before I move on, a little side note: I do want to give Ben Simmons his props. He's been playing relatively well the last couple of games, pretty efficient.
Hmm.
Um, but let's see if that continues throughout the season.
Yeah.
Back to this trade. So the way I kind of phrased it maybe was a little weird. I'm more so saying that if they do decide to move on from Kyrie but keep KD, they
Hmm.
obviously should go for more so for the picks, I think, than the talent, because I think unless you're adding a guy who can really be another number 2 to KD, there shouldn't be a reason why you're not going after the picks. You have a bunch of role players already around KD that I think are decent enough to,
Hmm.
you know, get time on the court. Like, Royce O'Neal, Yuta
Hmm.
Watanabe is being one of the best 3-point shooters in the league right now. You still have Seth Curry, Joe Harris. there's guys that are around him that can still play good basketball, but unless you're getting another guy that could really be like a Kyrie Irving type level, I don't see why you shouldn't go after the picks.
Yeah, and I think I might have misworded what I was trying to say. My whole point there was just that I don't think there's a way that they can stockpile the picks
Mm,
and be competitive. I think
okay.
let's assume that they were trading Kyrie. They have to go for one or the other with that, and so that's why I was bringing up like the other people on the team. And it's
Hmm.
like that's the only way that they could do both is that they'd have to move more than just Kyrie. And I really don't see them doing that when you look at the other two main guys that I was talking about.
Yeah, so I mean, like I completely understand you and I agree with you. I just feel like you can't if you trade Kyrie, you can't go up to Katie and be like, "Well, hey, look, we're tanking." Like you can't do that. Obviously, like you said earlier, Katie's not an easy piece to move, even though he's one of the best basketball players ever. His contract and what he's worth, what other teams are willing to give up for him, doesn't really match what everything else is trying to like. Everything else that's going around.
Yeah,
So
and
it's like
another thing about him is also, he's getting up there in age now. The injury
right.
history is piling up. And so that's actually bringing his value down a little bit.
Hmm.
Because when you look at, for instance, the Suns offer, they refuse to put Cam Johnson in a trade for KD.
Hmm.
And it's like, I mean, Cam Johnson, he's pretty good, but I mean, it's KD we're talking about here. So that just goes to show you that the whole like injury history, age, like all of that is kind of bringing his value down a bit.
Right. Let's go ahead and move on to some other trades. I
Mhm.
want to talk about two that involve the Rockets. One was actually for the Rockets, and I want to hear your thoughts on this one. Josh Green and Davis Bertans for Eric Gordon.
You know, from what I've seen of the Mavericks games that I've watched, Josh Green is actually looking like a pretty solid NBA player.
Hmm.
But man, that Bertans, man,
Yeah, yeah,
that
I know.
hurts.
It would be pretty bad to endure for however many more years that thing is.
I mean, I don't think that Josh Green is worth taking on the Bertans contract and losing Eric Gordon.
Well, okay, so in my opinion, I'm okay at this point with losing Eric Gordon. I know he's probably the only leadership voice in our locker room at this point, but I feel like KJ Martin's been playing so well that you are kind of forced to start him, but the only thing blocking him is Eric Gordon. And
Hmm.
I understand that when Tate comes back, he's also going to fight for that starting role, but at this point, I mean, it kind of seems like he'd be a better fit off the bench.
Yeah, no, I think that if the Rockets know what they're doing, Tate should not be starting over KJ Martin when Eric Gordon isn't playing, obviously.
Right. And I do like the the thought of adding Josh Green to our team, but I also absolutely hate and would dread the thought of having a Davis Bertans contract on our roster. It's almost like getting Russell Westbrook back in a sense, or John Wall.
Exactly. Except the difference is, at least with Westbrook, he'd be out there on the court playing. And that would arguably be a worse thing for us, but at least it would be happening. Whereas, Bertans, he's going to be contributing absolutely nothing useful to us, and he's just
Hmm.
going to soak up a lot of money. But on the subject of what I was saying about not wanting to lose Eric Gordon, it's less about like keeping him for us because he's just absolutely this valuable player and everything. And it's like you said, he's one of the only leadership voices on the team. So I think losing him in that aspect would be really tough when you consider how bad our coaching is, to be honest. If
Hmm.
I'm keeping it real there, our coaching is bad. I think it's time that we move on from Silas, which is the only instance in which I'd be okay with losing Eric Gordon for Bertans and Josh Green.
Yeah, and speaking of our coaching, this will have to be at the end of this episode, but I have a quick bone to pick with Steven Silas from last night's game.
All right.
So let's go ahead and move on to one of the other trades, and this one also involves the Rockets. I think this is even less of an impact trade for both teams, but it's kind of interesting in a way because I want to see what your thoughts are for how it affect the other team involved.
Okay.
Garrison Matthews and Boban Marjanovic for Kendrick Nunn and a 2023 second from the Lakers. Is it even worth doing these small little trades for the Lakers at this point if it doesn't seem like it's even really going to affect how the rest of the season plays out? And do you consider Garrison Matthews someone who could be part of this Rockets future? Because at the end of the day, he is only like 25, 26. And, you know, he's shown spurts here and there, not as good as he was last year, but I think he can still be someone who is good for depth.
Okay. Now, just also to make sure I heard you correctly, you said that Kendrick Nunn was who we get back from the Lakers,
and a 2023 second.
And yeah, the pick.
I know how you are with picks, so yeah.
It's just I just wanted to make sure I heard the player right.
Okay.
So yeah, okay. So we get back Kendrick Nunn. If I'm being real, I really don't care to get back Kendrick Nunn for us.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like our guard setup for the most part is fine as is, you know. In terms of the personnel we have, I don't have a problem. My problem is with the rotations, which I'm sure you're probably going to get into later.
Yeah, it's somewhat dealing with the rotations, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, like I think we definitely have the guard personnel that we need. I'm fine with who we have. Now, to answer your question about if these kinds of trades even matter for the Lakers, no, absolutely not. And truly, I don't think that this trade really makes a difference. Obviously, Boban's not going to do anything for them. If anything, he's just going to be the most important PR guy on their team because he's going to give them some positivity and some nice meme moments to take away from all of the chaos and drama that is their core.
Mm-hmm.
But Garrison Matthews, I truly don't believe that they're going to get a lot of production out of him, or a lot of useful production, that I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And then to answer your other question, I don't think that Garrison Matthews is a guy that could be a part of our team, like our full core that we want for the future. He does fit age-wise, like you were saying. He's only 25, 26. But I think the bigger problem is just, like you said, his consistency, because he's not as good as he was last year. And even this year, he's been mostly slow at the start of the season. And so I really don't think that he's a guy that should be counted in with our core. He can be on the team, but I don't think he should be like heavily considered as one of those guys that we just need to keep moving forward.
Mm. So for most part, for Garrison, like I said, I see him more as depth, not someone who's in our normal rotation. But if a guy like KJ goes out, or someone like that, a forward or a wing that goes out, we can use Garrison, who's a decent quality player. I just think that he won't be okay with being off that bench and not really getting too many minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was just kind of an interesting trade because, like I said, I wanted to know whether you think these little small trades even mean anything to the Lakers at this point, or they have to shoot big, or they're not going to do anything at all.
Oh yeah, no. Especially when you look at the players involved in this trade, I don't think it helps them.
Yeah. So do you want to go for one more trade, or do you want to kind of wrap things up?
We can do one more.
All right. So do you want? I'm gonna give you your choice on this one. Do you want one involving the Mavericks and Spurs, or do you want one involving the Pelicans and Magic?
Let's see the Pelicans and Magic.
All right. Mo Bamba for Jackson Hayes, Garrett Temple, and a 2024 second round pick.
You know, I think I like the sound of that, but I don't think the Magic would take that trade. Just because I feel like what they're finally getting out of Mo Bamba, in terms of him, you know, being able to stretch the floor the way he has been, is more useful to them than what Jackson Hayes would provide. And I'm not 100% sure what the issue is with Jackson Hayes and why he doesn't get a more prominent role with the Pelicans.
Mm-hmm.
But I am certain that he's not a guy who's going to, make that big of an impact regardless. Whereas I think even at this point, Mo Bamba definitely still has some room to become an even bigger impact player.
Yeah, I just think the whole interesting part of this deal would be the thought of how Mo Bamba would fit onto the Pelicans.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he's growing. This is his best year by far, and just wondering how he would stretch the floor or fit onto the floor with Zion, being because Zion is obviously not the best shooter.
Yeah.
I think that Mo Bamba could be a very quality starting center in the league, but at the same time, he's already 24 years old, and this is his first year really getting like good solid minutes. And yes, he's shown improvement, but I feel like because he's getting this improvement so late into his career, I mean, 24 isn't super late, but at the same time, it's not like like how Luka, or obviously he's not anywhere near close to. I'm not just saying that, but my whole point is saying that he's not getting the minutes that he's getting now, like back when he was like 21 or 22 or so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I know if I didn't clarify that, I was about to.
I was definitely. Man. My eyebrows went up. Like, whoa, what are we doing?
No. Come on now. I've had some bad takes on here, but that's just I don't even watch basketball at that point type of take.
To address what you did say though, I think that is a fair point. Like you said, 24, it's not terribly old, but to be 24 and you're just now getting significant minutes, it is definitely a bit concerning for your potential room for growth. Mm-hmm. But also, like you said, even though I've just said this phrase like 4 times now at this point, he's 24. So
yeah,
there's definitely like at least still a buffer period for even like an average player to grow within that time frame that he has left before he hits the traditionally believed prime age that most people just assume, oh, you hit this age and that's just it. That's where you just stop getting better.
Right. All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and wrap things up. But before we do that, I just want to go ahead and talk about this that happened last night at the Rockets and OKC game. So, we're pretty much torching the Thunder at this point. It's late in the fourth quarter, about 3 minutes left or so. I think we're almost up by 20. We're more so up by like 18, anywhere from 15 to 20, right? Mm-hmm. We have the game in the bag. Thunder missing shots. We're still able to kind of keep the foot on the pedal. And the crowd starts chanting, "We want Boban." Do we get Boban? Absolutely not. It was by far the chance almost matched the same amount of volume that the most exciting play had. And
wow.
I was already on Silas's kind of like on his bad side, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of puts a little bit bigger of a dent.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. That's really messed up, especially when you think back a couple of years back when Brad Stevens, he let Taco Fall get a run in because the crowd was chanting, "We want Taco."
Yeah.
It's like, come on, man. Like you said, winning by almost 20. Just let Boban get some minutes in the garbage time, man. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, you only have him there for PR reasons anyway. So, I mean, might as well, let him play when the fans want him, but we didn't get him, so I was kind of disappointed. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say about that. I mean, I could go on more about Steven Silas's rotations, but I won't do that this episode. But let's go ahead and wrap.
Save that.
Yeah, we can save that for another episode if they continue to do bad. Well, I mean, like I said, 2-game winning streak, but
go back to doing bad.
Back to being bad, yes. All right, let's go ahead and wrap things up. This is gonna be the end of the episode. If you like the episode, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe and comment down below and tell us about your trade ideas. Isaiah, any last comments?
Don't forget, share the podcast with as many people as you can.
All right, we will catch you on the next episode.